Say it's not a huge surprise. I actually think it's a massive shock. I stupidly did a kind of a rankings of potential Ireland captains from likeliest to courses as recently as yesterday, and I think I had Peter O'Mahony like fifth, but only because his future Munster seems uncertain. The consensus was that the IRFU would not renew his central contract, in which case it would fall to Munster to offer him a new contract. And certainly the whispers were that at the moment they weren't able to table a contract that would meet his satisfaction, that maybe the time was right for them to move on, at least from their perspective, and it would have been reluctantly, certainly. And yet, this kind of throws the cat among the pigeons or completely changes that narrative, doesn't it? In the sense that even the optics of Ireland or Munster not being able to retain the national team captain over the next few months would be very strange.
It is a strange scenario. It obviously massively strengthens Peter O'Mahony's hands if he wants to play on beyond the end of the season, which it sounds like he might have wanted. And yeah, that picture is changing seemingly every day, and what's going to happen there. I mean, at the moment, as far as I understand, Munster haven't made an offer and that he is due to come off his IRFU contract. But as I've said a few times on the pod, David Nucifora is heading off very shortly. David Humphreys is going to come in. Andy Farrell has his own ideas about what should happen as well. And I think that picture could change in a number of instances, not just O'Mahony, as that transition happens from Nucifora to Humphreys. Or maybe it is just a swan song for Peter O'Mahony. Maybe this will be his final season. I suppose from Farrell's point of view, and I think people get caught up, it's a new World Cup cycle. What are they going to do for the next 4 years? But his job right now is to try and defend the Grand Slam. That's what they're going to try and do in the coming weeks, because it really is upon them very quickly. They go into camp Monday, go to Portugal Wednesday, then they're straight over to Marseille to play a French team that we know is excellent even without Dupont. And while obviously the next World Cup is important to Ireland, the most important thing on his agenda right now is trying to win that Six Nations. And clearly he feels that Peter O'Mahony right now, who's contracted to the RFU right now and remains an excellent player right now, is the best leader for that. So yeah, you're right. It is very different circumstances. And if he's going back to the table in the short term, obviously this changes that scenario. But I think for Farrell, when he weighed it all up and the other contenders, it was a little bit of uncertainty, wasn't it? You know, James Ryan's going to be in a battle for his place in the second row. There's Henderson in form. McCarthy's the coming force there. Ty Burns been excellent for Ireland. Gary Ringrose is out at 13 and hasn't had a massive amount of captaincy experience. Caelan Doris only did it recently for the first time with Leinster and admitted that it was a bit of a kind of learning curve for him in terms of senior rugby. Dan Sheehan's not been a captain, although he's clearly a leader by example now. And Henderson's in that same battle really as Ryan. Whereas clearly in Farrell's mind, O'Mahony is still that first choice option at number 6 and will lead the team definitely for this Six Nations anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting one you say there, because if you mentioned that, say, James Ryan's position would be in contention or contended for by, say, Joe McCarthy and others. Ian Henderson obviously started over Ryan in that final pool game against Scotland at the World Cup, so nothing will be certain there. But I would have thought, and I think a lot of people would have felt as though O'Mahony's position would be even more so under threat, just because you have, say, Ryan Baird knocking on the door there. And like if O'Mahony starts, then probably one of Joe McCarthy or Ryan. Yeah, just I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, but it puts things in flux a little bit, and it probably makes it seem as though O'Mahony's position is a little bit more cemented than would have been expected coming into this conversation, right?
Yeah, probably by us on the outside, and I'm among those who's excited by Baird's form at the moment. But if you think about where Farrell is coming from, it's from a World Cup campaign where Baird didn't really, like, he wasn't that prominent a figure. We probably expected him to be that, and others expected him to be that. It just didn't really happen in terms of his impact on a World Cup campaign. And that's where Farrell is probably most thinking, not kind of URC games and Champions Cup games in the intermediate period, which, I mean, that World Cup is so recently as well. And O'Mahony started all 5 games and proved that he can put back-to-back performances together and he's fit again now. So if I'm in Farrell's, trying to get in Farrell's mind, that's probably how I'm thinking about it. They haven't really unleashed Ryan Baird yet, and obviously he's got a big part to play in that. Whatever has been happening in camp or not been happening in camp, I'm not privy to that, but it hasn't happened for him yet, really, with Ireland. While he is getting caps and he has played some big games, it hasn't been on a consistent basis. So by naming O'Mahony captain, they're clearly suggesting that he is going to be still that frontliner at 6, and we should not discount the form that he's had in that jersey over the past year and beyond. I think everyone would love to get that New Zealand game back, and no one really hit a top performance in that game. But prior to that, O'Mahony's form was really excellent, and he came back with notable effect for Munster last weekend. And as we mentioned in our chat with Eoin, as people would hear, he had a massive impact behind the scenes, apparently, with Munster, just getting back in that mix and grabbing hold of it all. And Farrell will want him to do something similar as they handle this. Let's mention Johnny Sexton for the first time. They handle this post-Johnny Sexton era. They've lost this unbelievably talismanic, incredibly influential player / coach / leader / everything. He's been so integral to everything this Ireland squad have done. And I'm certain that, that's really chief in Farrell's thinking as they just take the first step of that. And maybe the picture, this Ireland squad will morph a little bit more as they go on, but it feels like a wise move for the first step anyway.